Hello and welcome to all our guests joining us from around the world. My name is Fiona O'Brien. I'm the Chief Channel Officer and Head of Operations for Lenovo's Europe, Middle East and Africa Geo. I'm delighted to be here with you today at the Women in Technology World Series Festival, and even more excited to be talking about a topic that's near and dear to my heart, which is diversity and inclusion, particularly in our place of work. I'd like to put my experience in context and talk a little bit about my own evolution and career. I am in the tech industry for over 25 years. When I joined the tech industry in IBM, in fact, as a graduate from university, I joined at a time where women seemed to be in the ascendancy. There were 70% of the graduates were female in the year that I joined, and I started working for a very strong female leader. So I naively felt that diversity and inclusion was not a topic that I needed to concern myself with. The world had moved on, we were already there. However, as I progressed in my career, it became more and more obvious to me that actually I was sitting in a minority group, and that opened my eyes to the gaps that we had and the work that still needed to be done in this area. Now in my role in Lenovo, not only am I a business leader, but I also head up the Diversity and Inclusion Board here in the EMEA geography. And I mentor a wide range of people. In addition, in my personal life, I'm based in Dublin in Ireland. I work with a wider group of industry leaders in a program called Inspiring the Future. And that program is to match leaders in industry with young people coming through from disadvantaged areas to try and help them develop in both their education and in their career. For me, the key is allyship. We need to be able to lift each other up by advocating, and we need to share growth opportunities. I'm very lucky. I have both a voice, but more importantly, I have a platform. And I think it's incumbent upon all of us who have access to that platform to use it. So getting back to the topic at hand, today we're going to explore how diversity and inclusion is evolving, both in its definition and in its role in engaging employees and developing the workforce as society evolves. When we consider the topic of diversity and inclusion, it really has many rebirths over the past 60 years. I think in the first instance where we started to talk about it, we talked really about representational diversity. That was the primary focus. How do we get people in the door and into our organization who represent different cultures, races, genders, etc. And it was really a quantitative value, very much about the appearance of an organization. But rightly so, the conversation has now changed, and we have shifted not only from representational diversity, but now we're focusing on the idea of inclusion, which is more focused on the behaviors of the org. Inclusion to me is about creating a sense of belonging, acceptance, and equality for all employees. And to invoke this change, the majority must help. We must support and advocate for the minority. We must act as allies. And as that focus shifts from diversity to inclusion, the companies themselves need to grow in their approach. It's simply not enough anymore to have a program that ensures your workforce looks diverse. There has to be new programs and new initiatives that, once in the door, continues to develop that talent across all levels, but also ensures that all employees feel seen, heard, and integrated into the culture. Because this topic is ever evolving, Lenovo itself conducts an annual study on workplace attitudes. It helps us keep up with trends and understand how we as an organization need to pivot to address those trends. Earlier this year in January, we concluded our survey of 5,000 participants across a wide range of markets: US, UK, Germany, Brazil, China. And over the coming few minutes, I'd like to talk to you about the themes that have emerged from this study, and then what we do with those themes, and maybe give you some suggestions about how you should address them. So firstly, the three key themes that we see is the evolving values of this workforce demand that the workplace conform to them rather than the other way around. Employees now want to feel that their workplace aligns better to their personal values and lifestyles. And frankly, why this shift It's due in large part to the introduction of the Gen Z into the working community. This new generation prioritizes inclusion, and it's becoming a critical component of a workforce for this new generation. And finally, we're seeing how technology has the potential to facilitate a lot of these transformations that are in high demand. So what do workers want? When I started my career back 25 odd years ago, we entered a workforce expecting to conform to the norms and customs set by our employer. We respected the hierarchy, adhered to the schedule, the dress code, and largely speaking, you kept your opinion to yourself. That is no longer the world we live in. Increasingly, the workers demand that the workplace conforms to them rather than the other way around. We as employers need to accommodate to adapt for our employees' life outside of work, support their overall health and well-being, and enable employees to express themselves and to be heard on matters both big and small. In that scenario, it's not good enough anymore just to provide a good salary and a good set of benefits. People want to work for a company they identify with, that has a strong mission and purpose that aligns to their values. So in order to feel supported, we need to be looking at a wider range of benefits: work-life balance, opportunity for advancement, but most importantly of all, creating an environment where people feel safe, respected, and ultimately valued. We want them to bring their best selves to work, and it is only by creating that ecosystem that they can do that. So now more than ever, there's more pressure on us as companies to foster environments where people from a variety of backgrounds and life stages can work and thrive together. What is very clear as we looked at the results of this survey is that a company's D&I policies and performance has become a significant factor in whether a candidate will apply for a job in the first instance and whether they will accept a job with us. So if we look at the research, it says that over half the respondents across all of the markets say that a company's D&I policy is either extremely or very important when deciding where to apply and whether to accept an offer. This actually delineation is even more pronounced in emerging markets such as Brazil and China. And furthermore, the research is telling us that many employees feel that we should be doing more to proactively advance D&I. Again, especially true in both the Brazil and China markets, where about 2/3 of the people we surveyed wished their employees or their employers would do more to promote D&I. In a similar vein, the support for diversity and inclusion policies extends to how workers want to see diverse representation across company leadership. When you look at this, it's not through only the traditional dimensions of diversity like gender and race. It's also playing out because the diversity and inclusion metrics are growing and evolving. So what is considered diversity is evolving too, along the lines of religion, sexuality, those who are differently abled, and in China in particular, a growing support for leaders who also identify as parents. The fact of the matter is that people want to see leaders who reflect their values, who are similar to themselves. So how do we achieve that? We need to look at how we develop talent, of course, and have diverse leadership representation. And most companies tend to use mentors to develop their talent. So we talked a little bit about this in the survey to try and understand both mentorship and what people expected of their mentors or allies. So when you look at the results, you can see the first column representing the level of importance of having access to mentors or allies with a similar background or identity. The second column indicates the ease of finding a mentor with that commonality. So everyone is expressing to us it's important to have an access to a mentor or an ally who has a similar background, but unfortunately few feel that it's easy to find such an advocate. This gap creates an opportunity for companies to invest in mentoring programs and employee resource groups to help their talent develop the kind of productive professional relationships that will help them navigate their way up their career path. The next insight I'd bring to your attention is also in the area of employee well-being and mental health. Employees across all markets indicate how important it is that companies offer mental health support, such as time off for therapy, stress reduction programs, and general well-being. But what is a little bit worrying, I think, is across all the markets, less than half of the employees surveyed say their workplace has the resources for dealing with mental health issues. And many employees are also unaware if their company has mental health resources or not. To put that in a context of economics, a recent World Health Organization study estimates that depression and anxiety disorders cost the global economy $1 trillion per year in lost productivity. So those workplaces that promote mental health and support people with mental disorders are more likely to reduce absenteeism, increase productivity, and benefit from associated economic gains. Earlier, I talked about the shift of ideals of what workers want from their employees, and it was really accelerated by the Gen Z generation entering the workforce. We're at a strange point in time because we are now for the first time having a workforce that is spanning 4 generations. And each of those generations bring their own unique experiences and needs to the table. And we need to be cognizant of that. I think if we look at the generations, you would say that millennials were probably the first ones who started this fresh look at diversity and inclusion in the workplace. So really focused more on the inclusion piece. But as they begin to move into their 40s and the younger generation is now entering the workforce, that demand for inclusion has become an even more active imperative. Gen Z is a very diverse generation, and they've grown up experiencing and expecting inclusion at home, on campus, and in their local communities. And they're an activist generation, and they carry it forward in everything they do, including where they choose to work. They courageously call out and stand up for injustice, including the mistreatment of typically marginalized groups. And because of that shift of value that the younger generation brings, it's having a massive impact on how companies do and should conduct themselves. So earlier we looked at data showing support for diversity among leadership roles. But in our study, we went a step deeper to look at how the different generations value diverse leadership. And I suppose I want to bring your attention to 1 or 2 things here. I just want to highlight how Gen Z is already making an impact on the status quo. There is a significant gap in overall prioritization between the oldest and the youngest generation. If you look at the data there, it's showing Gen Z employees across the markets lead other generations when it comes to finding importance in the diverse makeup of company leadership. For example, Gen Z, by a 22-point margin, want to see more LGBTQ representation compared to baby boomers. The other thing that highlights the difference of opinion between Gen Z and baby boomers, for example, is really around the importance for companies to provide benefits for groups with specific needs. 77% of global Gen Z respondees rank that as important or extremely important, compared to 58% of baby boomers. And this is what we call the equity factor. Really, we're all familiar with the concept of equality, ensuring everyone has equal opportunities and equal access to resources regardless of their background. But equity goes a step further because it's evaluating what is specifically needed and acknowledging that not everybody starts at an equal place. Whereas previous generations began the conversation of establishing accommodations to ensure equality, Gen Z is favoring further development of policies and programs that address more nuanced, specific challenges and addressing specific needs. I work for a technology company, and amid COVID discussions this year, there's been a lot of focus on the transformation power of technology in the workplace. We all hear a lot about new normal, and we know that everyone's version of normal has been upended among the work from home, work for school model. But regardless of whether it's through the lens of COVID or looking at a longer time frame, technology has been playing a role in changing the landscape of where we work and how we work for a significant amount of time. And if a diverse and inclusive workplace is the goal that we're after, technology has the power to get us there. It facilitates human connection and understanding, and ultimately empathy, while also enabling dynamic and flexible work environments to improve global employee connectivity. Technology is already moving us in the right direction, but we also have to be cognizant that there are potential negatives, and we as an industry have a responsibility to actively manage those negatives and neutralize them. When you look at the connectivity that technology introduces, it has the ability to bridge accessibility gaps for differently abled individuals, or connect people across borders, physical or political. And frankly, a lot of us are using technology today to drive continual training, career development programs, and so on. It was already facilitating the ability to work in more dynamic, flexible ways. And if you look at the survey, in areas such as Brazil and China, people are valuing technology for the ability it brings to collaborate with co-workers across the markets. When asked what's most important to employees at their jobs, work-life balance and paid time off topped the list, many times ranking above salary. I mentioned earlier that redefining of workplace norms was really accelerated this year with COVID, as many people moved to remote or virtual work in response to the social distancing requirements. And it's really put tech in the spotlight as a solution, not only in times of crisis, but in response to this ever-changing and growing demand for better flexibility, particularly among the demographic of working parents, who in most cases are seeking a better option to balance home life and their careers. So it will come as no surprise that our research is showing that working parents value tech more than non-parents. Respondents who identified as a parent strongly agreed that advances in technology have allowed people to work in a more dynamic and flexible way comparing to their non-parent counterparts. When we asked which way technology has empowered them to work, parents by a 12-point margin indicated more flexible hours as one of the top examples. So why does all this matter? We know times are always changing, with shifting cultural views and values. Why as a business should any of that play a role in how you structure your workforce? Of course, as companies, we can't move with every passing trend, but what we do have to understand is long-term evolution and make sure that we bring that into our policies and support structures. Ultimately, inclusion in the workplace is about creating an environment where employees of all backgrounds feel comfortable and supported, so they can succeed and they can contribute to the best of their ability. To me, inclusion enables people, especially those historically marginalized groups, to fully participate and thrive in their work. And it's clear that the benefit of an inclusive workplace extends to employers too. It's costly to have a high turnover in an organization. And those companies who can retain staff and can promote from within reduce that cost, but also get immense benefit. Respondents to our research indicate that when employees feel a sense of belonging to where they work, it leads to a greater sense of engagement, more loyalty to their employer, and a feeling of safety at work. And quite frankly, a greater sense of belonging will also lead employees to realize their full potential. To me, inclusion is about empowerment, enabling employees to achieve their fullest potential, take risks, make bold moves, and thrive at work, no matter what identity and history they bring into the office each day. Additionally, I think the other point we would raise is that an inclusive workforce yields better innovation for our business. If I take a learning from Lenovo specifically, we operate with a mission of delivering smarter technology for all and being a leader and an enabler of intelligent transformation. The key words there are for all, because that means everyone. We can't possibly create products or solutions for a diverse global customer base if we're not developing our workforce to reflect that diversity in our talent. You'll see a picture in front of you, and the lady in that photo is Habeen Girma. She's the first deafblind graduate of Harvard Law School and is beginning her second year at Lenovo as our Global Accessibility and Inclusion Advisor to the business. Our partnership with Habeen is a great example of how companies can take these growing and evolving demands for workplace culture, and start embedding them into the business. This year, we've enacted several programs and initiatives that further our commitment to delivering greater value products and solutions for a diverse world, including developing accessibility guidelines, launching ABLE, our new resource group for those living with or caring with disabilities, and launching a product diversity office to help ensure accessibility, diversity and inclusion are reflected in our product development process. These commitments, along with our partnership with EMEA and the signing up to the valuable 500 commitment, has helped us reinforce and magnify Lenovo's focus on creating technology and an inclusive culture that is accessible to everybody. We've been able to utilize the insights found in this data and other research efforts to pivot our business approach to diversity and inclusion and expand our remit to grow and accommodate. I suppose to finish up the session, I'd like to share with you 3 key learnings from my perspective and maybe some actions that you can take to do the same within your business. So firstly, you have to create opportunities for D&I within your business, and that means at every level, across every organization. Contrary to popular belief, D&I efforts cannot be the sole responsibility of a D&I officer or a HR partner. It takes the whole company from top down to start adopting this mindset and implementing these behaviors. I mentioned at the start that I ran the D&I board at an EMEA level. We also have a D&I board at global level. We also utilize a huge number of employee resource groups to serve as communities for shared identities of employees across race, gender, ability, and so on. And we engage with those groups regularly as a way to understand what employees want and facilitate that sense of belonging. Secondly, once you have the structures in place to embed D&I through your business, you have to implement regular continuous reviews. D&I by its nature is iterative, not static. You cannot just set a goal in a program and then forget about it. No, society and people evolve, so too must your approach. In Lenovo, we do things such as the Lenovo Listen Survey, where we regularly give our employees a chance to provide feedback to us on areas within the company, and then we take actions. We also go through a process of organizational HR planning where we evaluate the talent pipeline, and embedded within that is considerations into looking at the diversity of the business unit or organization. And the final point I would say is that you need to root your strategies for diversity and inclusion in data, both in order to stay informed, but also to keep yourself accountable. I think the call to action for all of us as individuals, however, is really around allyship. We need to be allies. A true ally will regularly listen to those around them, adapt their thinking, rework what they believe to be correct, and basically become comfortable with being uncomfortable. It can be a unique and challenging journey to become and remain an ally. But honestly, for me, it's a journey worth taking. Thank you very much for sharing your time with me today. Hopefully, I've given you some good insights and some possible actions that you can take and bring back into your own personal engagement with D&I and your company engagement with D&I.